for joining us today at the Twin Cities Immigration Forum. This is a monthly meeting that the City of Minneapolis Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs and the City of St. Paul Immigrant and Refugee Program host to address topics of interest and concern to immigrant and refugee residents and individuals and organizations that serve immigrant and refugee communities here in Minneapolis and in St. Paul. This monthly series originated as a way to unpack federal immigration policies, programs, actions, and news. But over the last couple of years, the forum has expanded beyond immigration updates to include discussions on various or a variety of topics touching Minnesota residents with community and government speakers and updates. Today's agenda, we're going to go through some recognitions for this month. We're going to have a discussion and honor individuals and organizations promoting immigrant and refugee inclusion, and an invitation to everyone on the call to honor and recognize organizations or individuals in the community during this Immigrant Heritage Month, World Refugee Day, Caribbean American Heritage Month, Juneteenth, Pride, the 12th anniversary of DACA, and World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, which is June 15th. So we've got quite a few recognitions this month. Then we'll get to immigration updates, including the presidential proclamation and interim final rule, changing the rules around asylum and people entering the southern border and their access to apply for asylum. Then we'll have state legislative roundup. Then we'll get through government and community updates and additional opportunities for people on the call to bring up updates or events they want to share with the group. And then we'll talk a little bit about our upcoming Citizenship and Immigration Fair this Saturday, June 15th in Minneapolis. And we'll end by giving everybody a reminder about our next meeting. With that, turn it over to Michelle.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Edmundo. So my name is Michelle Rivero. I'm the director of the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs for the City of Minneapolis. And as Edmundo indicated, there are very many recognitions this month, and just wanted to take a quick moment to talk a little bit about some of them. As June is Immigrant Heritage Month and Caribbean American Heritage Month, and June 20th is World Refugee Day, we know that these are occasions that offer the opportunity to honor, recognize, and celebrate the cultures, the history, and the resilience of communities which are an essential part of our city and nation. Just today, the Minneapolis City Council advanced a resolution in honor of these three occasions, and it was lovely to actually see council members as well as city staff speaking in their native and ancestral languages and recognizing these holidays. So I will put a link to the YouTube video of the resolution in the chat so folks can check it out. As Edmundo indicated, in June we also celebrate Juneteenth on June 19th and Pride, the 12th anniversary of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, and also World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is June 15th. And as some of these occasions may not be on folks' radar, I just do want to share a little bit of information about World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, as Governor Walz proclaimed today, Minnesota Elder Abuse Awareness Day. The purpose of this day is to offer an opportunity for communities around the world to promote a better understanding of abuse and neglect of older persons by raising awareness of the cultural, social, economic, and demographic processes affecting elder abuse and neglect. This year, the spotlight is on older people in emergencies. If folks have a concern about an older adult in your own life, there's a great resource that is elderjusticemn.org, and I will put that link in the chat as well. Also wanted to take a moment to recognize that there have been a number of unfortunate and tragic losses since our last Twin Cities Immigration Forum, including the loss of a mother, victim of gunfire, Lilian Paulachin Perez, and the mother of children, including a 2-year-old child who is also impacted by that act of violence. We've lost a Minneapolis police officer, Officer Jamal Mitchell, in May, late May. And also we have lost individuals who were strong advocates for immigrant and refugee inclusion, including the co-founder of Amigos del Mercado, Elizabeth Grant, and former executive from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, Bill Blazer. So just wanted to take a moment to recognize these individuals, some of whom you may have known, some of whom you have heard or learned about, who are no longer with us in corporeal form, but certainly in our memories and in our thoughts. And if folks may want to share any ideas or recollections, please feel free to do so. We just wanted to make sure to give space in recognizing the losses we've experienced in our community since our last Twin Cities Immigration Forum. We also want to take a moment to honor individuals and organizations that are with us that promote immigrant and refugee inclusion, and have done some invitations, some reach outs to folks. You know, I'm not sure how many people know this, but both Edmundo and myself are reaching anniversaries of the existence of our offices and programs. The Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs of the City of Minneapolis was established in July of 2018. And Edmundo, you were experiencing your 5-year anniversary, right?
Yeah, June 3rd, 2019. So this is 5 years last week.
And we know that some additional folks here also were very intrepid and started organizations around the same time that our offices became established. And so invite folks to, if you have an anecdote or something to share with regard to your own organization, please feel free to do so. And Francisco Segovia, very grateful that you've accepted our invitation to hop on and share some reflections with regard to the organization that you lead, Copal. So welcome, Francisco. We're very happy to welcome you here, and turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here with you, and thanks for the invitation as well. And I'm positive there are so many people here who also have done so many things to better the lives of so many people. And so our story is just one of many stories that that we can share, that I'm happy to share. And so the invitation, I understand, is about to tell how we end up creating this organization, the process, and why, all those things that I believe that sometimes we have in our heads. But before that, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I came to Minnesota in 1990. I left my home country because El Salvador, my home country, was going through a civil war. And by then, by the time that I left El Salvador, already thousands of people have left. Some to the neighboring countries like Honduras or Guatemala. Mexico was a destination for many, and so many others to the United States. So I believe that during that time, maybe about 1 million of us ended up in the United States. And like many other people, you know, when you had to leave home, you leave everything behind and cross borders. In my case, I had to cross 3 borders. I love the song, a song that was put together by a Mexican group, Los Tigres del Norte. So they call the Tres Veces Mojado, which is, you know, if you use the word wetback, it's not a good thing, but you know, it's for us. So we are excited and honor that. But but those identities are the ones that we carry on, right? So coming to Minnesota, making Minnesota home, no English proficiency, no documentation, and my wife, ex-wife, and son, who was born in Florida, so he was only 2 months old when we arrived to Minnesota. We ended up staying with nuns who gave us shelter. We stay in their basement in the City Riverside, across the street from the City Riverside Park. So that was the beginning of life in Minnesota, navigating and understanding everything, unable to go back home for obvious reasons, as I mentioned, but also navigating the systems and everything else. So, like many of you, many of us, I was able to navigate and to get the support from people that was essential to be where we are. So many of the things that we have achieved is not only it was because us only, it's because we have people around us who support us. So with that in mind, I was hired 1994. I did all the existential jobs that we hope to do, right? Cleaning and survival jobs, essential jobs, and go through the whole process. But the question that I was asked is to speak about the COPAL, Comunidades Organizando el Poder y la Acción Latina. So how COPAL came about. In 2017, after I had worked for so many years in a nonprofit called Pillsbury United Communities, where I was the director of a community center in the Phillips neighborhood. For a while, the core work of the organization was human services, social services. But in the center where I used to work, we introduced concept of self-sufficiency, civic engagement, and other things that I believed for long that are essential tools for people to become agents of system change. And so after a while, I reached out to some friends. Some of them are still board members. I say, hey, what about if we create a statewide organization that could join the ecosystem, lay out an ideals about what the future will look like for us if we work on issues impacting our community. By then, the issue of driver licenses was already in place. That 2023, 2003 is when that was taken away. By then, so many struggles about working with the political systems, different elected officials, and the sense of, how do we do this? Because we keep trying. We go to these elected official, we go to this other one, we do this, we do that, we tell them, we do what they tell us to do, we vote, we do this, but nothing happens. And so by then, by 2017, there was a little bit of frustration that we couldn't see the changes in spite of being told so many times that our Latino community or Latina community was or has been so essential in the makeup of Minnesota as our community is growing in significant numbers. But that didn't translate enough to reverse the driver license issue. And so there was a point where the concept of power came about. If I come to you and ask you for something, it was up to them, to the goodwill, to give us that. And that's what we kept trying for many, many years without any success. And so the concept of power came about, and it was like, if we build our power, our electoral power, our organizing our community, that power, if we use and build that power, can we make things happen? That was super, super essential in this process, because without that power, I realized, and I don't know if it's the case for many people, but I realized we were always begging for something. And it's not that we don't want to be grateful for things, right? But there is a moment where it's about our life, it's our dignity. It is about the future of our kids. It's about shaping the state where we contribute. But the idea of having power was super, super essential. And from there, for the learning from that reality of the driver license to many other things, the language sometimes it was utilized to win elections in some cases, and it still is, as many of you know, um, made us realize that if we don't have the power, someone can use us to win elections or do this because there are not repercussions. And so, but if we organize ourselves, we lay out a vision for what the world will look like, for what Minnesota will look like, with us on the table negotiating. And if we have an agenda that we can, or in an organized way, we can push through, maybe we can make some changes. And so that was the evolution of how we were creating the organization. In the process, we also realized that sometimes we confuse the means with the ends. In this case, the means, there is someone who says something about immigrants, we are ready to march. Someone did something, we are ready to march. Uh, so the march became the answer to a lot of things. And march is not that are bad. I mean, it's the sometimes and oftentimes that can be the result of many frustrations that we people have about a range of things. But the march alone wasn't doing enough, because you go to the march, you express yourself, who knows who hear you, you go home until the next things happens. So the idea was like, okay, how do we understand that the march is a mean to an end? And we realized as well that elections were a mean to an end. How many times are immigrants are asked, hey, it's time for you to vote, and we are voting, but we don't even sometimes know who to vote for, or we just vote, but we don't vote as a block. We vote as individuals, and we don't ask for anything an exchange of that vote, right? What is their values? What values this person has in front of us that is doesn't meet our own values? And so the idea was like, how do we negotiate that? That if you support this vision that we have, and it's not about party, it's about a vision. It's about a vision for dignity. It's a vision for to live better. And so through this process, we got to a point where what is the purpose of our organization? And I invite you to check out our website, and we have our strategic plan. The, the conclusion was, at the end of the day, and I can ask many of you, what is it that we fight for, or we do what we do? It's just to live better. It's just to live with dignity. It's to feel safe. We cross borders. We do different things just to achieve that simple thing, which is just to live better. Very simple to say, very hard to achieve. And so in our strategic plan, we kind of lay out that very particular thing. All what we want is to achieve a greater, a dignified life for us, for our communities, and also understanding that power is essential to achieve that. Also understanding that it is not us as a Latino, it is us as a community, because obviously we are in an ecosystem that is pretty diverse, and supporting others. So that was how the organization came about. When COVID hit us, we were only a few years old organization. Our organization has been in place for 6 years only. And when COVID came, and we were able to achieve our status, that's the C3 and C4 status in 2019. Late November is when we got our papers. And it was in 2020 when we were able to begin operating independently of a sponsor. So we were like, okay, now we're operating. so many things we had to figure out, accounting, HR, and so many challenges, which again, to my brothers, sisters here, if you ever want to reach out to ask those particular questions, more than happy, because it was hard. It is still hard, not question about it. But not having an accountant, not having an HR, all the challenges that come with that. Uh, and then COVID came, and then uh, we got some funding from the state. We have some contracts with the city of Minneapolis to support our community, and we out of 500 phone calls that we have on a weekly basis, 300 had to do with jobs. And that's how we end up creating the worker center that Claudia, who is joining us here, leads, understanding that our community was facing so many challenges. So we have a video here that's the built up of the organization. So we're now our 34 employees organization with presence in the Twin Cities, Mankato, and Rochester recently. And we have built connections with about 45,000 people across the state in these 6 years of existence. And our vehicles that we use to engage people are the Worker Center as one of them. We have a team that does environmental justice. They pass laws so essential for the well-being of our communities. An organizing team that help us to build the power that I keep mentioning about, a health and wellness. And also we have the communications, because relaying information to you and others is so essential. What is the purpose and our vision for a better world? And our 2 offices. But I was going to ask Claudia if she can help me to put the new thing that we are working on right now. So in the process of building the organization, we realized that we needed a place where we can do our work. And so we came up with this concept, the Latino Center for Community Engagement. And so we were able to secure some funding to purchase where the old Raleigh auto store it used to be, that was damaged during the George Floyd uprising. So it's the 29th and Lake Street. So we purchased that building damaged, that we're not going to be able to use it. So we basically demolished the building. If you drive by, you won't see it anymore. We have fenced it in. And that is where we hope to, or we are working so hard to build this place that you see over there. And so with that is the inspiration that as immigrants, as refugees, as people who have deep dreams for a better world, the places where we go are places that we are going to contribute. And this is the contribution that we hope to leave for many generations, a place where people can come, a place where people can connect themselves with the South, or the South can come and connect with Minnesota. And so in this location, we are going to run the various things that I mentioned before. We are also going to have a coffee shop and use the coffee shop as a cultural place for various things that we believe are key. Right here is the where the parking lot is. There is a green house where
That's
we
lovely.
understand.
Yeah, this is wonderful. You know, Francisco, this is an incredible amount of progress in 6 short years. And I'm sure that people will be reaching out to you to find out more about how you accomplished it all in such a short period of time. I wonder whether you may be able to put contact information and also your website into the chat, so folks can reach out and can learn more. We've definitely been super grateful for the partnership with Copal. I know that one of our Citizenship and Immigration Fairs was hosted at the Copal Workers Center, and that was very well attended, and are very grateful for the work that you're doing in so many different areas that is impactful to immigrant and refugee residents. And I appreciate your constant reference to the idea of power. You know, there is a great deal of power in community, and people recognizing that they do have power, and that working together is a way to achieve incredible results, including the results that your own organization has been able to bring to life. So I wonder whether there are questions that people may have for Francisco. Again, you know, with this component of the Twin Cities Immigration Forum, really did want to take some time to highlight individuals and organizations that are making such an important contribution, and also explore a little bit our history, you know, individuals and organizations that people may not be aware of, but that are doing really important work. If there are questions for Francisco, otherwise I'll turn it to Edmundo. Thank you so much, Francisco, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Oh, you're muted, Edmundo. Oh, so there's a question about whether there's an office in St. Paul, Francisco.
No, it is not. Although we have people from St. Paul that comes to the Lake Street, the way that we have managed our database, and when we reach out to people, we send text messages and other things, and we do it in ways in which we can say, like this for Minneapolis, this for St. Paul. We most likely have about 3,000 connections in St. Paul that we manage in our database that we are on a regular basis connecting with.
That's great. And there's a follow-up question, which perhaps you've already answered. Would you collaborate with organizations in St. Paul?
We sure do. We sure are. We have different connections and reach out to anyone, but please reach out to us. We can find common ground and work together. Yes.
That's wonderful. And again, if you could put, let's see, I see you put your email and website in the chat. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And the Latino Center in Minnesota, I imagine that takes you to some of the information that Claudia had just uploaded.
Yes, if anyone wants to reach out for information, more than happy. Like our website has been, we readjusted our website, so check it out. There is a lot of good information, but also you can call me. I mean, or send me an email, so when I write it down here.
Wonderful. Thank you again.
Thank you, Francisco and Claudia, for joining us today, and congratulations to Copal, and I wish you all the best. And I can honestly say that Copal is a border organization. They operate very close to the border of St. Paul and Minneapolis. Been to Copal several times, and love working with you guys, and looking forward to a long history of working together. So thank you very much.
Gracias.
Gracias. All right. Well, next I'd like to turn it to Dr. Bruce Corey, who's joining us today. Dr. Corey, you know, as many of you know, does quite a bit of work with immigrant and refugee communities and entrepreneurs and businesses in our Twin Cities. You know, he was former director of planning and economic development in St. Paul, and his work positively impacted the city of St. Paul and continues to impact the work that I do today in such a positive way. I'm really excited to have Dr. Corey back and talk to us about a new project he's working on.
Thank you, Edmundo and Michelle. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because
I can. I just go ahead.
It looks like I can't see my video, so I'm not sure if it's the bandwidth.
Your video is frozen, but we can hear you just fine. So, okay, so I'm going to turn my camera off. Okay. Maybe that will help with the bandwidth.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation to here, and thanks for the great work that's being done by this Twin Cities Immigration Forum. I just want to quickly, Edmundo asked me to talk a little bit about some of the statistics relevant to Immigrant Heritage Month. I just found from the state census data, for example, did you know that the immigrant economy is at least $7 trillion. And how did I come with that number nationally? I just took the income of immigrants, foreign born, I think about 46 million foreign born, and their per capita income, and that's about $2.2 trillion. And then if I look at the value of the residential real estate, the homes that we have,
Dr. Corey, I think you froze up a little bit.
Okay, how about now? You can hear me now because suddenly I was muted. Okay, so if you look, so it's about a $7 trillion economy when you look at just income and the value of our home. So that's huge because it would be the third largest economy in the world if you were to rank countries by GDP. That's the magnitude of the power and the engine of economic growth to this country. And then locally in Minnesota, I recently shared by when a representative of the White House from Asian Pacific Islanders came to town, I said, there are, in Minnesota, the facts do not bear common stereotypes that refugees are bad or immigrants are a drain on society. So if you take this experience of, for example, the Hmong in Minnesota, you'll find that they have dramatically improved their economic conditions as well as adding a lot of value, as you could see even in the legislature, the amount of political power there. And then when you look at immigrant communities too, you can see a very dramatic change in contribution, just taking one community, for instance, Asian Indians. So these stereotypes are not born on facts. And I just wanted to share that to both of to the group here. And then finally, the initiative I'm working on is that for many years I've been involved with this concept called cultural destinations, where, in the values of the African, Latino, Asian, Native American, foreign-born communities have generally not been celebrated as other values, but we have learned ways to take the stone that the builders rejected and become the cornerstone. So we start businesses, cultural-based businesses. So we call them cultural destinations. And so we can see it on University Avenue, you can see it on Lake Street, where businesses share their culture at the same time build wealth. So I had the opportunity to have a booth in the State Fair, and this year it's called the Cultural Destination Boutique in the Education Building, where I'll be featuring cultural businesses, and I'm organizing it by country. And I'll put in the chat an application form if some people are interested. I'm going to be featuring cultural businesses, and also by themes like coffee beans of the world, sauces of the world, storybooks of the world. And so to date, I've got about people from about 20 countries that have applied to be part of the booth, and I'm going to be locking that in soon just to plan ahead. But another part of the boutique will be showing an interactive painting on I Belong Here, belonging, where people can come and express their sense of belonging. So I'll put it in the chat, and so I welcome you to connect with me if you have a business, and then also to bring people to the boutique whenever the State Fair comes up. So won't take too much of your time. That's all I have to share. Thank you very much, Michelle and Edmundo, for inviting me, and Edmundo for your good words.
Oh, you're muted, Edmundo.
Myself again. I muted myself again. I apologize. Dr. Corey, always a pleasure to see you and hear you and talk with you. It's always been such a great benefit and joy. So thank you for joining us. Any questions for Dr. Corey about the booths at the state fairs, which I for sure will be visiting?
Yep, and while people are queuing up their questions, Dr. Corey, if there is any publicly available information now or that might be forthcoming where people can learn more, I'm sure people would be super interested in that. So feel free to put information in the chat. It looks like you just did.
Yeah. Dr. Corey just put the form for people who might be interested in participating. Carla asked, what is the name of the place again? I think they're the Cultural Destinations booth at the State Fair. So there'll be opportunities at the State Fair.
That's awesome. Also seeing a question from Francisco. Have you published any recent reports?
Yes,
I think
Frank.
your reports are kind of famous.
Yeah, I have it on empoweringstrategies.org. Most of the data I put is out there. I'll put the link again by different communities. And I have updated my data on people of Mexican origin in Minnesota, and then have continued, whenever I update something, I put it on my website. So I'll put a link there, and I'm putting a link to the booth, more information about it. And earlier I posted a link for the application form if someone wants to put an application to be part of that. I think it's going to be very exciting. And here is my link.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Corey. And, you know, as you're someone who has been focused on immigrant and refugee inclusion and portraying an accurate immigration narrative for longer than some of the younger folks have even been alive, it really is an honor to welcome you to the Twin Cities Immigration Forum. I'm really happy that you're able to come on and share this wonderful information for us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a trailblazer in this area.
Thank you, Dr. Corey. Good to see you again. All right.
Any other updates that people want to share? Because we are going to transition next to immigration related topics. So maybe we should go straight there. And just to queue up, if there are updates that people want to share, feel free to indicate that in the chat. And once we get to community updates, we can transition there. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Do you want me to open this, or do you want
Sure.
to?
You can start with the presidential proclamation.
Okay, so our main immigration update today is the presidential proclamation and interim final rule and guidance that came out last week. Last week, President Biden issued a proclamation on the southern border called Securing the Border, that makes changes in processing of people who are attempting to enter the United States from the southern border during periods of time where the attempted entries are above a certain number. And the change, it was effective as of June 5th, 2024. The interim final rule that came out, which provides more of an explanation around how the government intends to restrict access to asylum at the border, was published on June 7th. While it goes into effect, there is a window where people are able to submit public comments. There's a 30-day window. In order to assist folks in understanding what the interim final rule means, the government itself has put out a memorandum which provides implementation guidance. In addition, there is a webinar that came out recently, and we'll put that in the chat as well. I am seeing Julia adding information in the chat about how Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota recently spoke on the record with Minnesota Public Radio about the proclamation and interim rule. Thank you very much for putting that in the chat. I'll turn it over to Edmundo and then invite folks who may have questions or may have additional information to share to go ahead and share that information while I populate the chat with some of the links where people can explore, learn more, watch a webinar, and become more well-informed about the proclamation and the interim rule and their impacts. But Edmundo, I'm going to turn it over to you super quick while I put these things in the chat.
Sure. There's been a lot in the press about the proclamation and so-called closing down of the border. I think people are going to continue to come, but their access to asylum is going to be restricted. It's a very serious development. So we're trying to give you as many resources as we can so that people can become informed and and really make their own opinions about how this is going to impact migration to the U.S. through the southern border and ultimately to Minnesota. I know Michelle is going to probably put the presidential proclamation itself. There's a pretty good fact sheet that came from DHS explaining the changes in the proclamation. The Federal Register with the actual interim rule that will be used to implement the proclamation is Michelle will also be giving us. That's pretty extensive and quite a long read. Then there was a statement from DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. And then there's a statement from the Department of Homeland Security. And then there was a pretty good overview from the Congressional Research Report regarding presidential authority on restrictions at the border. And then Michelle found a really good information piece on the differences between executive orders and proclamations. I think you'll see in the news that this action is described as an executive order. It's technically not an executive order. An executive order directs government officials to take action. A proclamation impacts individuals, and it has effect of law if the president has legal authority over those individuals. And in this case, it impacts individuals entering the southern border, and through our U.S. Constitution and federal laws, the president has authority over those individuals. So this proclamation has the effect of law. And finally, implementation information. There is an ICE implementation guidance that came out right after the proclamation was issued. And we give you that ICE memo as it describes the actions ICE plans to take. And Michelle, you did indicate you're also going to give there is a video. There was a webinar yesterday done by the American Immigration Council on the proclamation and its impact on asylum seekers and people coming to the U.S. who may have a legitimate claim for asylum, and how that is going to impede their ability to apply for asylum. So there's quite a bit of concern. I know at least two organizations have indicated they intend to file a lawsuit to try to prevent the proclamation from going forward. So much more to come in the future.
Yeah, and it sounds like, thanks, Julia, for putting that in the chat, that the ACLU, there's another NPR story that ACLU is suing. I did put the webinar, the American Immigration Council webinar, in the chat. I already see a hand raised. So we wanted to make sure that folks have as much information as possible, including helpful ways to digest what these actions are, what they mean, how people can respond, and what changes are proposed. So thank you very much for Julia, for the stuff that you've included in the chat. And Howard, please go ahead. I see you have your hand raised.
I have a letter to President Biden in the Washington Post that ran yesterday. And I invite people to use that letter to send to the Minnesota Congressional Delegation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Howard, for sharing that. And I know that you've sent a link over, so we'll include that in the chat as well. And I would also just ask Julia, I know that you are on for another topic, but if there's anything else you wanted to share with regard to the news pieces that you put in the chat, invite you to share just a tiny bit, if you could, with the group.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Julia Decker. I'm Policy Director at the Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota. Not a lot to add. I think as the very smart people at American Immigration Council and other organizations really start to digest more, my sort of discussion with a lot of media has been that this will be another legal battle, sort of to figure out the nuts and bolts and the ins and outs of just how far the executive authority under 212F really extends, and that there is a fair amount of uncertainty. There have been some court cases, but not a lot. So of course, this will be a sort of a litigation battle, as many things have been in the immigration context. So it's just very fluid, I guess you could say, is the situation.
Thanks for sharing that, Julia. I really appreciate that context. And Howard, I see your hand raised. Go ahead. Or I'm not sure if it remained raised from
Sorry,
before.
I'm trying to lower my hand.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. So again, we wanted to ensure that community members were aware of this development. I know it's been in the news, but also have accurate sources of information. So people have the opportunity to digest and understand the impact. I imagine that more explanatory information will be coming out in the next few days and weeks, as well as actions. As Julia is saying, this is a very fluid situation with a number of entities, including the ACLU, already litigating over this effort to restrict access to asylum and really limit the amount of information that people who are at the border have around the asylum application process, including the credible fear interview process. So invite folks to, if you have additional questions or comments, or things that you'd like to share, feel free to do so. Feel free to connect with Edmundo and myself offline if you would like to discuss this topic in additional detail. And Edmundo, I'll turn it back to you if there's more here, or if you'd like to move on to our next bullet point for today.
We can move on to our next bullet point. I think there's a lot of information for people to look at, and please take a look. I think there's a lot to see and learn. I think next we are going to do a quick legislative roundup with Julia Decker. If Julia's still on.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Julia.
Hi. I am recovering still from a little bit of a respiratory thing, so my voice, as you can hear, is a little bit off, and I will spare you the screen appearance, the video appearance. It's been a rough few days, but I am here, and I will endeavor to give a brief update of what things had happened at the state legislature. So this is Minnesota, not federal. Just sort of a quick sort of overview, I guess. I don't know how many people watched the very, very end of the state legislative session, but it was very chaotic. There was a lot of yelling and a lot of just noise around the last maybe 20-30 minutes of session, right around midnight on the last day. So that was an interesting way to go out. In terms of things that did make it through in the end, it took a while for advocates and everybody to sort of get their heads around it because of how chaotic it was. But a couple things that I believe Copal was really instrumental in around ITIN numbers being accepted by landlords on rent applications, as well as for utilities, so things like water, electricity, and stuff like that, where the landlords or the companies would ask for a social security number. They now are required to accept an ITIN, individual tax identification number, in lieu of a social security number. So for immigrant communities who may have an ITIN instead of a social security number, this is going to be beneficial. There were a number of provisions around what they call plain language requirements that were passed on through a variety of different bills, but basically talking about if a state agency is providing information, maybe it's like a manual or a notice about like a wage garnishment or something like that, that they all be standardized to use, plain language so that it's understandable to as many people as possible. So I think generally for communities where maybe English is the second language, this can be additionally beneficial to accessing information from state agencies. There were a number of grants or grant programs that were passed, largely one-time funding, so not continuing funding, but sort of one-time grants of money to establish things like community heritage and culture celebrations, improving healthcare access, mental health care access, disability care access. There was an appropriation for a new education community center, recreation center in Cedar Riverside. So those were all sort of just money given over to do these additional projects. That money will not be, as I said, it's a one-time thing, so that money won't be there, you know, for every year going forward. It's just a one-time thing. But I think those are generally beneficial programs for the immigrant refugee community in Minnesota. There was a bill that changed the structure of legal aid services overall in Minnesota. For maybe community members, you won't necessarily see a huge difference, but I think just understanding that legal aid organizations used to be sort of working with an organization that was underneath the judicial branch, and now it's been moved into sort of a board where there will be people appointed by the Supreme Court and the governor who then are working to make sure that legal aid organizations are funded. There were some bills that did not pass this session, but did have some action. So there was a post-conviction relief bill that would have expanded access for immigrants and refugees, among others, but including immigrants and refugees, to challenge an old criminal conviction, particularly if they were in a position where now suddenly they may be faced with a deportation or removal order based on like a 20-year-old criminal conviction. That did not pass, but it did make it all the way to end of session negotiations, which is maybe the farthest it's ever gotten, as far as I'm aware, in the last 5-6 years. So that was, I would say, even though it didn't pass, that was a good thing to see. There was not a lot of movement around a proposal to create an affordable auto insurance program, which particularly for folks who have recently gotten their license under the new driver's license for all would have been potentially helpful in accessing more affordable auto insurance. Folks were likely aware of the North Star Act, which would have created sort of separation between Minnesota state's agencies and law enforcement, separating that out from federal immigration law enforcement. That did not get a hearing. So we'll have to wait and see if that comes back potentially in future years. And let's see, I think the other thing, not that it was not necessarily a particular bill or proposal, but we did see amendments brought up around trying to create citizenship or residency requirements for various programs. And while those were largely voted down, so they didn't go on to bills, that is something that I think for community members and for advocates in particular to just be keeping an ear out for, as you know, for the next session and in future sort of advocacy efforts, that could become a thing that we will see more frequently. So that is sort of the summary. I'm happy to try and answer additional questions. So it was actually quite a bit that went on, although it maybe wasn't as flashy, like it wasn't as, you know, big as the driver's license for all or something like that.
Yeah, still important, and very happy, Julia, that on behalf of Immigrant Law Center of Minnesota, that you've been tracking and have been engaged on these topics throughout session, and that you're able to hop on and share some updates with us regarding what went through, what did not, what people should keep an eye on for the future. If there is a location, like if it's the ILCM website, or if there's a place where some of this information is accessible so people may be able to kind of walk through it at their leisure, let us know. If there are like bill numbers or law names that we may be able to send out to folks afterwards so that people can take a moment and kind of dig into the legislation and read it for themselves. Let us know too, but really, really appreciate the walkthrough and the summary of how session went, including the tumultuous last moments of it.
For sure. Happy to chat with everybody.
Wonderful. Any questions for Julia? Feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. Otherwise, we are going to transition to government and community updates here in a quick moment.
Thank you, Julia, for joining us when you weren't feeling good. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I don't see any questions, so I'll kick off with government updates from City of Minneapolis. I'm about to share a link in the chat to Minnehaha 3000. The city is constructing a community center at Minnehaha 3000, and there has been a good bit of engagement underway. There's also a survey that's available that will run through the summer. You can learn about this project, the history of it. You can weigh in if you like by completing the survey. And I've just put the link into the chat for folks to learn more. Let's see. I don't know if we want to share job updates too, but City of Minneapolis is always hiring. There are a few job opportunities that are coming up, and I will put a link to the jobs page so people have that information accessible. I know we'll say this at the end, but I'm just going to say it again here. We are in partnership with City of St. Paul hosting our next Citizenship and Immigration Fair on this Saturday, June 15th, from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Open Door Learning Center in Minneapolis. So a great deal of information. You can learn about the citizenship application process, also learn generally about immigration-related topics. We'll have some information about driver's licenses, labor rights, and there will be legal service providers. We're hosted by Literacy Minnesota. We're really grateful to have Literacy Minnesota as a host. We'll be at 627 West Broadway. There will also be vaccinations, including, we just learned, children's vaccinations. At the event, we always do coffee and donuts. Interpreters will be available, as well as representatives from a variety of different organizations and entities, including Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, which will have information about the zero interest New American Loan Program for people who are filing applications for citizenship. So a wealth of information and resources. Edmundo and I will both be there, and invite anyone who is interested in participating to learn about citizenship, learn about immigration application process. Also, for folks who may be interested in volunteering, Literacy Minnesota is always interested in volunteers who are interested in teaching English language classes or connecting with newcomers to help prepare them for their naturalization tests. So it's a great space for volunteers to come by and learn more and connect with a variety of different organizations, including Literacy Minnesota. So that was a total mouthful of stuff. And I think I shared flyers already in multiple languages, but if you have not received a flyer and are looking for one, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We've got flyers in a number of different languages. And with that, I will turn it to Edmundo.
Great, Michelle. I think given the time, I'll just do this real quickly. Just wanted to let everybody know there's a virtual Welcome Corps roundtable with Minnesota community organizations on Monday, June 17th at 3 p.m. If you're interested in attending, we will put a link to register in the chat. Welcome Corps is also hosting a regular information session for Spanish speakers who may want to sponsor someone they know. That session will be on Tuesday, June 18th at 6 p.m. Central, and we can put a link to that as well. Also, Welcome Corps will be hosting 2 public sessions and would love to have community members attend those sessions. The first being on Friday, June 21st at 3 p.m. Central at Alight, which is at 325 Quincy Street Northeast in Minneapolis. And we'll put a link to that event in the chat. Also, there'll be a second session on Sunday, June 23rd, again at Alight on 1325 Quincy Street in Minneapolis. We'll put a link there. Also want to just let people know that City of St. Paul is supporting a Red Cross blood drive on Thursday, June 27th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 891 North Dale Street, second floor, conference room. We'll put a link in where people can sign up if they want to donate blood. We note the Red Cross has indicated that there's a real need, especially for blood, especially for those folks of African American or Black descent. So we're really trying to support this blood drive. And with that, I'll turn it back to Michelle.
Yep. So I'm putting stuff into the chat. I also wanted to share with folks that another event that City of Minneapolis and City of St. Paul have participated in recognition of Immigrant Heritage Month is a series of conversation of Facebook Lives highlighting the city's separation ordinances, UNT visa and law enforcement certification awareness, and crime prevention, how not to be a victim of crime. The first session took place earlier this month, and we'll share the Facebook Live and YouTube links for those videos that included the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, the Attorney General's Office, City of St. Paul Police Department, and I feel like I'm missing one other entity, and I can't remember which one it is. But it was hosted by Hasser. And so the Facebook Live and YouTube recording is now available. There will be another session. It might be this Tuesday. It might be next Tuesday. So we'll share information when the next Facebook Live will be taking place. But wanting to make sure that folks are aware of the resources available in case one is a victim of a crime. Also understanding the UNT visa process and understanding the city's separation ordinances. So hosting a series of events, and much gratitude to Hasser for being the host for those virtual spaces. As I'm putting those links in the chat, just invite folks to, if you have updates that you'd like to share with the group, please take a moment and do so now. Feel free to say it out loud, raise your hand, put it in the chat, but we want to make sure that this space is as useful as possible for you all to be sharing information about events, programs, projects, engagements, and questions that you have on any topic. So feel free to go ahead and ask your question or make your comment. Howard, please go ahead. I see you have your hand raised. And I can't hear you. I don't know if you are speaking and maybe other people can hear you and something's wrong.
He might still have his hand up from last time.
I don't think so.
Okay.
All right. Well, as if anyone has any other updates that you'd like to share, as you're thinking about your updates, just want to remind folks that we do have a Welcoming Twin Cities meeting that focuses on newcomer connections and supports. It's alternate Wednesdays from 4:30 to 5:30. OIRA, the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs in Minneapolis, also hosts office hours and community on Wednesdays at the Career Force Center at 777 East Lake Street from 2 to 4 p.m. Those are accessible on the OIRA events calendar, which you can find at OIRA Minneapolis. And our next Twin Cities Immigration Forum is scheduled for Thursday, July 11th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. So just also want to say that these Forums are always recorded. The recordings are always available on the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs webpage. And I'm seeing a question in the chat from Adriana. You are working with, let's see, a few families asking about DACA and whether there are any DACA updates. Let's see, one moment. One second. So the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has been doing a pretty effective job at providing updates around DACA. And Edmundo, it sounded like you were unmuting, so go ahead.
No, that there is actually an advocacy campaign going on for cities for action to support DACA recipients and to encourage the federal government to take action to assist DACA recipients and those who might be eligible for DACA but haven't been able to apply. So there's still a lot of advocacy, but there have been a couple of USCIS updates and information on website about how to apply, how it works, and I think we shared those. We may have shared those at the last forum, and we can kind of pull them back if Adriana, we can get those for you if you need them.
Yep, there is a PDF that's available, a resource guide for impacted communities to help individuals stay informed. I don't know if this is what you just said, Edmundo. I'm sorry, because I was reading at the same time.
Yep, that's what I was referring to.
Okay, sorry.
I think we referred to it
that.
last meeting.
Yep.
It may even be in the notes from last meeting. Yeah.
Yep, and I see Julia has her hand raised. So Julia, please go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to, I don't know if this is directly on point about the question related to DACA, but there is some chatter on social media around that the thought that after the border executive action, that there may be another executive action that the president is considering that would be like more positive for immigrant and refugee communities. There's nothing concrete, obviously, it's a lot of chatter, but these are typically people who are in DC working on these issues more directly. So I think just as these things sort of filter through different media sources, that it may be coming out in different ways and through different community channels. And so I just wanted to sort of flag that for everybody, that if you were hearing some of that in the ether, in the sort of atmosphere, I think that is potentially where that discussion is coming from. And it's a lot of chatter right now. It's nothing confirmed or concrete.
Yep, so fingers crossed, and if there is any news to share, we will definitely share updates with this group and in other spaces. So we're very grateful to everyone for taking time today to participate in the Twin Cities Immigration Forum. If there are no additional updates, I'm just going to leave it open for a second so that people can pull out links if they're interested in grabbing them. Otherwise, we'll work to share links from today's meeting by email so that folks are able to utilize them, and we'll also share additional flyers, including for this Saturday's event. But any other topics that people want to touch on before we wrap for today? Otherwise, we'll say adios and gracias and arrivederci.
Thank you.
As we say goodbye.
Hasta luego, nos veremos.
Muchas gracias.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, as we say goodbye, just our next Twin Cities forum will be on Thursday, July 11th from 4:30 to 6. And if you have any agenda items or topics you'd like us to address, please reach out to me or Michelle. Send us an email, and we're happy to look at ideas and forum topics for next month or any month after. Thanks.
Yep. Sounds good. Thank you, everybody. Ci vediamo.
Gracias.
Grazie.